Oh, I'll tell you, I was disappointed by Topaz. That movie was just not that good. So when I heard about the next movie that was in this collection, I'm like, okay, what is this about? What is Frenzy about? In this morbid blend of horror and wit, the necktie murderer has the London police on red alert, and an innocent man, Jon Finch, is on a desperate quest to find the real criminal and clear his own name. Frenzy is Hitchcock's full first film to have nude scenes. Nude models were used as stand-ins for both Barbara Leigh Hunt and Anna Massey. Unhappy with the authenticity of the dialogue, Jon Finch made rewrites to the script that Hitchcock kept in the final film. Henry Mancini, yes, Mancini himself, was hired to score the film, but was reportedly fired from the project due to Hitchcock thinking the soundtrack sounded too much like the music of his usual composer, Bernard Herrmann. Famous for his cinematic ingenuity, Hitchcock crafted a well-known continuous shot that occurs at the halfway point of the film. In the shot, the camera moves away from an upper-level apartment and descends on the floor, exits the building front door, and then crosses over to the opposite side of the street. Finally, a letter from the author himself. Dear Mr. Hitchcock, I was delighted to read in the Times this morning that you're going to film one of my books. I had heard from my publishers that negotiations were going on, but had received no confirmation. I'd very much like to call and see you before you go back. By the way, I suppose you know that there was a Swedish film called Frenzy. Yours sincerely, Arthur LeBurn. So there's your trivia. This movie's freaking fantastic. It's all you need to know. It's over with. I'm just kidding, of course. This is his penultimate film, and by this time, it felt like this film feels like a massive reset that was desperately needed for Hitchcock. Because after all the political and other types of movies out there, this one just seems like it was a massive return. It's like, hey, let's go back to jolly old, well, not exactly jolly England back in 1972. But instead, let's just get let's get a good story going on. Let's get a whole bunch of people with mustaches. It's like, hey, let's get our character, let's get the police, let's get the officers, let's get the bartender. Let's give them all mustaches for whatever reason. But then let's give the main guy no mustache. I don't know. That just kind of sprung out to me. So, yeah. This is not like an epic adventure. This isn't like this. They're not going to Cuba. Instead, let's just have this take place in London. Let's have what's known as the necktie murderer going on. You know, it's like here's an everyday necktie. If anyone gives a crud, it's a Tommy Hilfiger. I got for like 10, 15 bucks or whatever. It's smooth. Let's have a person who's going around and strangling them, and then have the innocent man be accused. And what makes this movie work is the irony. It's like the dramatic irony. It's like we know that there's this mustacheless schmuck who's going around strangling the women and even having his way with them at least a couple of different times. Let's have the same guy mention something about a potato truck, saying like how potatoes are useless or something, and then later he is currently going through his ravaging through a potato truck because the body that he disposed of contained a pin that could identify him. So let's have him spend 10 minutes in a rather, I'm going to call it just a great scene where he's going on while the truck is driving. Because rigor mortis has set in, this is clenched in. I'm just looking at this and I'm like, why can't you get this pin that's been enclosed in this woman's hand? Turns out it's rigor mortis. So he tries using a pocket knife, doesn't work. Finally, he has to actually break the fingers one by one. We hear the bones cracking. Oof. This makes so, and then eventually the truck gets off at some truck stop, and we see the man get out. He looks he looks fine, but he's a little dusty. That comes into part later. But yeah. But in the matter of how this man bills all of his victims is just, oof. In the sense, it's just there's no music and it's a close up. This is just one of the most realistic depictions of someone getting murdered. That up at that time must have been pretty dang disturbing. I mean, when I saw the first one, about rough was that 25 minutes in, it was just scary as heck to look at. I mean, even the first body that's there, it's just like it's disturbing. It's like the lack of music, the close-ups on the face as these unfortunate women are getting well billed. It's disturbing. This is a disturbing, but it's a dark comedy in a way because it's like yeah, it's like we focus on the person who's murdering these women, and we get just to see how much of a detestable person he is. Like I said, about halfway in, when he's going to bill another woman, the camera just zooms out, so we know exactly what's going on, but we can only wonder. But we know the implications. There's no scream. There's nothing. It's just this long take with no dialogue. One of the common frequencies that Alfred would use, and it's just when it finally zooms out, you just feel wrong inside, like just something that we witnessed. Yeah. Of course, Jon Finch, who plays the protagonist, does a good job. You know, he was a newcomer, and it's like, hey, you're doing a dang good job because it's like, you know, he's playing a down on his luck English bloke. So let's have him just be. He's wrongly accused, but he's not exactly going like massively on the run like in North by Northwest or in Saboteur. So this is like the returning back to the trope, but doing it in England way with English motifs of comedy, wit, and things like that. So I definitely did enjoy this one. Lack of music there is great, and we even get to see, yeah, and of course there's also the interesting, I guess, relationship that one of the detectives had, where this movie, one of the things I've noticed was the gender dynamics of like how it was for women and men in England in the 1970s, like how this woman is making these elaborate fancy meals like quail or pig's feet, but using like French terms to describe and make them fancier than they are. I mean, it does look really good, but eventually the man describes the truck stop as having humble food like steak and eggs, a ham and cheese sandwich, and breakfast. So it was just interesting to see the, I guess, delicious, pardon the pun, like yeah, the delicious differences between that. So yeah, you know, this movie is like there's a little bit of blood, there's a little bit of nudity, but it's not like it's excessive like gorehounds or something like that. It's like it's there to make you feel disturbed, but in a good way. I mean, this movie is almost 2 hours long, but there's a lot of frenetic, yeah, frenetic energy that goes by, and you're like, you know, I like this. I really think that this works out well. I like the pacing. Just the fact that they use a necktie for things, and the performance from the guy who plays Bob Rusk, the villain in this, when he's going through the potato truck, and you know he's acting like he's gonna help out our hero, but he's ultimately kind of gets the guy to go in the hospital. It's gets our hero arrested. Yeah, I guess maybe one thing I noticed is that like towards the very end, like when they put sleeping pills inside this guard's drink, they're in the hospital, and it just I don't know. It's like how do they give that, put it in? I'm just like, how did that work? Whatever. I don't know. So yeah, I felt like this was a nice, just gosh darn fantastic return to form, you know. But at the same time, Hitchcock was around 72 years old, and it's like, hey, my wife isn't doing so good, so he wasn't present on set most days. But ultimately, I think he went out truly with a really gosh darn fantastic movie. You know, I mean, even disc right here just to show off the screaming and the energy. So please, I really do recommend that you watch Frenzy.